Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. We're going to get started in just a moment. We're so glad that you can join us today. Just a little bit longer as everyone is coming into the room, and then we'll get started. Okay, so welcome to the Gray Decision Intelligence Demand Trend webinar. We do have a few housekeeping items to get started with. At the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a place labeled Q&A. Please feel free to add your questions there. We will get to as many as we can during the session, and we can certainly follow up later with you if we do run out of time for your question. My Gray colleagues and I will be available for chat for the duration of the session. You will receive a link to the webinar recording and the presentation slides in the next day or so. Please look for it in your email. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Zach Paz, our main presenter for this session.
Great. Thank you, Marianne. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. Good morning. Joining you from Los Angeles, California. So it's still morning over here. So happy Thursday, and looking forward to our session today as we have a couple of things we're going to go through, our normal updates for student demand and employment. But we do have a special guest with us today from Nuventive, who we've partnered with to help put together planning and improvement workflows using a software. And so we're really excited to kind of show you possibilities of what you can do with creating the right workflows to make sure you're working through the questions that you need to answer about programs and leveraging the information right where you're answering those questions. So as a quick reminder, our framework is called the Program Evaluation System, and it brings together four very critical pieces of the institution when we're thinking about managing programs. From starting with your mission and keeping that in front of center as you're thinking through all of your decisions, from to keeping track of your academic measures, to understanding the costs and revenues and margins for your programs and courses, and then finally getting an external market perspective, which if you're familiar, this is what will be our focus today. There's this outer ring here, engage, inform, evaluate, and manage. And part of it is implementing not only this data, but having it in a place for and in a process for your colleagues and your teams to go through. And that's one of these examples we want to show you today with Nuventive. So hope you stick around and see what you can do with software like that. So from a markets perspective, what do we like to look at here? We start with student demand. What are students interested in? We'll talk a lot more in detail of kind of the different aspects of that, the strengths and weaknesses of each of those, some of the data sources available. Employment, it always has been important and increasingly important as students and parents and their stakeholders think about how the ROI for their programming and their education. Competitive intensity, which we don't really cover in this session, but is, I think, one of the most important things to consider, especially as higher education just becomes more competitive. Students have more options, more flexible options as well. So understanding what they're choosing between is very important, and understanding how are you fitting in the market. Are you gaining market share, losing market share, or staying the same? So having an idea of the competitiveness of the market for your programs is important. And the final piece is an area I like to think about as, where is there more opportunity from a program level standpoint? If I have current programs, could I be offering different levels? For example, the business administration at the bachelor's level, the obvious one is also being able to offer masters. Now, when you're thinking about new programs, can you identify what is the most appropriate level or levels for that new program? So this is the basis for how we think about market data and bringing all this into one place. So For today, we'll be focusing on student demand and employment updates for the most recent month through March, and we will start with Google. And one thing we start with Google is if you think about the life cycle of a student, deciding on first education and then what program and then actually completing. And that's why we look at multiple data sources on student demand to really try to understand that full funnel of student interest. Google, very forward thinking. These are searches that are happening in the most recent month. How are those trending? How are those changing? And you want to be aware of what students are searching for, because if you don't have those programs, they might not even see your institution at all, even though that might not be the program that they end up enrolling in or completing in. The next phase is then enrollment. Okay, what did they actually decide? What program did they start with? And again, I think a lot of us can understand that that's not always the program they complete in, and that's where the completions IPEDS data comes in. Completes the funnel, students actually voted with their feet. You can now understand that, okay, they have completed that program. And so again, completing that funnel. So it's really important to look at all these different pieces because the student decision changes over time as well. And then ultimately you want to have, what do they actually do in that case? So in the most recent data in terms of Google, just so everyone, just to remind everyone, we're tracking keywords for the top 900 programs. And those 900 academic programs or zip codes cover over 90% of all US completions. So we're covering a lot of interest across all of these programs. For each one of these programs, we track an average of 15 keywords. So an example keyword might be bachelor's in mechanical engineering. So we track how many times that has been searched across the US, by state, by county, and we allocate down to more granular levels. But you can get very specific down to geographies, which is also very important as well. So in this case, we're comparing 3 years. So we're looking at 2023, 2024, 2025. And what we saw in March in the last 2 years, a gradual increase. And over the last, really starting summer of last year, we've really seen an increase in year-over-year searches, and especially in March this year, 45% increase in the keywords that we're tracking across those 900 programs. So big jump in searches, and hopefully this is an indicator of, okay, that next level of funnel, which we'll talk about in enrollment. In addition to search volume, we also look at cost, and in this case, a cost per click. And just to be a little bit more specific, we track what does it cost to get the top result when someone searches for one of the keywords that we're tracking. So it's really a way for us to compare apples to apples across all the keywords to say, what's the cost for the top result? And let's compare that across programs. Let's also then compare that over time. In this case, the first 2 months of the year were actually lower in costs. And it was only this in March where we first saw an increase, a 3% increase in the cost per click. One thing that this also helps us understand is competition as well. Typically, if the cost is going higher, that should suggest that there's more institutions or entities bidding on those keywords. So it kind of gives you a couple of different views into student demand. One is a competitive factor. Two is, what kind of budget do I need to put together for a new program? Can I compare that to a program that I already know? And if we're going to be bidding on and advertising from a program level, which we really believe is becoming increasingly important as more competition comes into play, how do I budget appropriately for that or think about that? Now, digging into some specifics, this is a look at the fastest growing programs in March year over year. So comparing March 2025 to March 2024. And the top program is computer programming, grew over 600% in searches. The next one is economics. And we can see that there's also among the top, the most kind of biggest area is actually health, mental health, where we're seeing 4 programs: counseling, psychology, substance abuse, school counseling, and clinical psychology in the top 10 as well. So this is a good look into understanding where there's an increase in search volume. And if you have some of these programs, the question is, are you realizing that potential? And can you work with your marketing team? Or if you are in the marketing department, are you seeing an uptick in the number of impressions that you're making, or inquiries that you're getting? So again, a way to help benchmark your performance, however you define that, with external market data. So very, very early on in the life cycle of a student, when they're searching for programs, let's move to the next stage of enrollment. And this is a look at both total enrollment and at the bachelor's level, and then at the master's level. And what we've seen at the bachelor's level is pretty, flat, fluctuating about 2% down. But in the most recent years, 2023 and 2024, we have been flat to now up 1%. Now, what this tells me is I would want to compare, how does my bachelor's enrollment compare to the market? Did I remain flat? Did I decline? Did I increase 1%? Did I increase more than 1%? Again, a way for you to benchmark how your enrollment to the market. Similar to what we saw at the master's level, a 1% increase, although that did fluctuate a lot more over the last 7 years than the bachelor's level. But hopefully this is an early indicator that enrollment is trending up. As far as digging into at the program level, so this is the bachelor's programs that grew the fastest on a percentage basis year over year. Data analytics, business analytics, and cybersecurity were the top 3, grew 20% or more, and data analytics was 34%. We have a couple other STEM and tech fields: finance and biomedical sciences, legal studies, exercise physiology grew 11%. And then we have some business programs still growing: accounting, construction management, and logistics, rounding out the top 10 there. Again, if these are your current programs, how are you comparing yourself to the market? And is there opportunity that you're either missing out on, or are you outpacing the market? From a master's perspective, data analytics shows up again. So not only is it one of the fastest growing at the bachelor's level, but it is also one of the fastest growing at the master's level, followed by finance, financial analytics, 28%, psychiatric mental health nursing at 20%, cybersecurity again shows up 17%. And so again, you're seeing not only a trend across, in certain areas, but a trend across different award levels as well, where there's topics that are coming up more and more frequently. So are you taking advantage and understanding how that influences the demand for your institution? And are there different things that you should be doing to make sure that you're putting your institution out there so prospective students know about your program and compare your program to others? Now, there is one other data source that we like to look at outside of Google search enrollment and completions, which is the non-degree demand indicators. And this is a way to understand what topics are of interest of students. And in this case, we're looking at, as of March 2025, almost 145 million learners. So there's a lot of volume here, and you can learn a lot from understanding where students are enrolling the most. And you can see that of the top 10, 7 of them are technology, data, AI. Interesting to see technical support fundamentals, but foundations of UX and UI design. So the question here is, how can I use this information to understand what topics, courses, curriculum I should add to my programming, even if it's not an IT program? Could I offer these types of courses to any of my majors? Because these are very in-demand interest programs and topics. And in addition to looking at enrollment from the course level in Coursera, we can also see what skills are being taught. And so this is a look at the highest skills volume from March 2024 to March 2025. Data analysis, data visualization. So as you can see, some of the most in-demand skills that people are looking for are really around data. And I hope this isn't a surprise to anyone with how much AI is such a huge topic, not just in education, but everywhere else as well. So again, this could help you identify how can you differentiate your programs, even if they're not STEM or tech. Could you add some type of coursework to any of your programs, as in these are very in demand across the board. Now, another area that we also look at is the international student demand. How much interest is there in US domestic programs from people around the world, prospective students around the world? So we actually track page views on a partner of ours called Study Portals. And what they do is they have an index of a lot of programs, thousands and thousands of programs that students around the world can view to see if they want to explore education. And in the most recent month, we actually saw a decline in page views. And that's actually one of the first times since August and September of last year where we actually saw a decline. And it didn't decline everywhere. It declined mostly at the bachelor's and master's levels. Doctorate programs actually increased 15%. So I wonder if there's a shift to focusing more international at the doctoral level rather than at the bachelor's and master's level. One of the use cases for this data is not just understanding the overall trends and from a program perspective, which I'll show you in the next page, but is really understand where the searches are occurring. And we've seen success from institutions that work with this to target different geographies and not just spread your limited, your resources, however that is, whether they're limited or you have a good amount of resources across many countries. Could you focus that in certain areas where you have the programming where those prospective students are interested in? And can you do that by country and then even city within the country? As far as what programs are of interest, on the left side, we're looking at bachelor's. Music performance was very high. We're looking at a minimum of 400 searches, so it could be a smaller volume, but still, for some reason, music performance grew 42% in page views. Health services, allied health, 33%, finance, electrical, computer engineering, and arts and entertainment, media management, round out the top 10. And on the right side, we have the master's programs. And so marketing, master's in marketing, business, information technology, and international business all grew over 90%. So although overall page views are down, there is still a lot opportunity from a program perspective. And then having this information, could you be more tactical with decisions around what programs should we be focusing on rather than our entire portfolio internationally? And also then what geography should we be focusing on to really take full advantage of the resources that you have? Right. So that rounds out student demand. And then our next, we're going to talk about employment. One thing that we always like to highlight is the relationship between programs and occupations. It's one of the most convoluted relationships but it's also one of the most important relationships within in higher education. So each month we pick a different program to illustrate how how complex this actually is. So here's an example. We're looking at bachelor's in English. This is a look at the quote unquote direct preparation program. So the National Center for Education Statistics has a crosswalk from what students study to what occupations they're being directly prepared for. And in this case, there's 6 occupations. And what we're showing you is the job postings volume for, oh, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, job postings volume for those 6 occupations. So the top one, secondary school teachers, next technical writers, editors, English language, literature teachers, writers and authors, and proofreaders. So keep that in mind as we then show you using professional profiles, where do these graduates actually get employed? And what we found studying over 500,000 profiles is that there's 780 occupations they go into. And of the 10 occupations, 2 of them were on that direct prep page. So that actually isn't too bad. Sometimes we see it where none of them are on the page, the first 10 page or the first 10 occupations. But the number one out of the 500,000, the number one outcome in terms of what occupation is advertising and promotion managers. So what could you actually do with that information? You have an English degree. Could you leverage this information to say, we know what students, they're obviously there's a lot of different outcomes for students, but from the evidence, we can see a lot of them go into advertising. Some other things that we see up here, marketing as well, market research. Could you take that information? And I want to show you a screen here, jumping a little bit out here. This is now looking at advertising and promotion managers from a job postings perspective and saying, what are the top skills for advertising and promotion managers? And so could you now include this as part of your programming so that, yes, you have English bachelors and English majors, and they'll go through their required, English degree requirements, but are there different pathways that you can also offer within their electives to say, this is a big opportunity. There's lots of advertising and promotion manager jobs in our region. I would, again, specifically look in your region. Can you offer a pathway for them to get their English degree, but also have these skills of advertising and marketing? And what are those skills that are looking for? Who are the employers? Can you create relationships with those employers and create a link and a bridge between your English program to the occupation and the job opportunities in the market? So just want to give an example of how you can stay true to the English major, but also offer these skills that are needed in the workforce today, and understanding that English majors often go into advertising. So once you get past all of that, you can then look at what are the trends. So in this case, we're looking at March, and we saw an increase of 11% year over year. So job postings actually increased. Last in February was about flat to slightly down. January was up, and so it'll be interesting how this continues as there's a lot going on in the world today. But there's 11% increase overall. Some of the fastest jobs in terms of what are growing, we see software developers, physical therapists, industrial engineers, financial investment analysts, accountants, and auditors. And some of these are growing a lot. We do have a minimum national about 5,000, so it's not the smallest areas, but it's also important to look at volume growth as well. But again, this gives you an idea of nationally what's going on, more importantly, what's going on in your region, who are those employers, why are they, what jobs are they requesting, what skills are they looking for to help inform different programming and courses you can offer. In addition to job level, we also look at skills. As I showed you the example for advertising, this is the fastest growing skill volume, bachelor's and above, in March 2025. The first two are about operations, which is interesting. I don't think I've seen this before, where operational efficiency and business operations are at the top. It's very interesting to see efficiency come up as the top skill, especially with all of the stuff going on with efficiency in the world. But after operations and efficiency, and we see Python, automation is another one. And it's one thing to keep in mind, these skills have, you can look at the skill level, but sometimes you need a little bit more context. Automation can mean a lot of things. It can mean something different for factories. It can mean something different for an advertising agency, right? So what is that about automation, and is there specific needs in your market around automation? Is it automation of processes and business, or is it you have a lot of factories and you actually need automation from a factory standpoint? So while the keywords are here and helpful, having the details to understand who the employer is actually asking for automation and what the context of that is also very important. So that's the update for this month in terms of trends in both student demand and employment. Now I'm going to hand it over to our friends at Nuventive, John, to show you an example of how you can implement workflows to help planning and improvement.
Great. Thanks so much, Zach. Let me get my screen up here. Okay. Can you see my screen, Zach?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you, folks. It's great to be here. I'm John Golodakis. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for Nuventive. And let me tell you a little bit about Nuventive if you're not familiar with us. Nuventive is the data-informed improvement company. We are focused on helping organizations bring together distributed planning and assessment processes informed by data and being able to execute those at scale across large organizations. We've been in business for about 25 years. We've worked with hundreds of higher education organizations on a wide variety of processes. And we've partnered with our friends at Gray to bring our technology to the fantastic dashboards that Gray makes available to their customers to really help bring some cross-organizational process and repeatability to analysis of those dashboards and applying them to evaluating academic programs. So what we have here is this program evaluation system that we've put together. And this leverages a concept that Nuventive calls guided analytics. What that means is that we can take analytics like a Gray dashboard, right? And then we can say, when I get that, what am I supposed to do with it? And so the Gray team has applied some expertise to be able to say, okay, when I look at a dashboard, right, it has some good content on it, but I can have any program chair that's looking at it now be informed by the same sets of questions that they should be using for their analysis. So whether they're an expert in this data or they've never seen it before, right, they're given some guidance on what to do with it to be able to move forward and look at how is my program doing, what action should I take, and ultimately what's my conclusion as to the future of this program. Should I be growing it? Should I be sustaining it? Should we be shrinking it? What should we be doing? And so that analysis, in addition to being done in every program, can then inform leadership because we can be looking across that consistent analysis across the organization and seeing what is it that we're doing. So let's take a look at how this works. So I'm here on the home page of an academic unit, in this case, computer science. And to see what I can do as a user here in Nuventive, I'm going to click on, as it says here in the directions, the main menu. And when I do that, it gives me three options, right? We've set up a semester review, which is kind of a condensed version of looking at the data at the end of fall semester to say where we stand, what should we be doing. We have an annual review, which builds on that and adds a few more sections and walks you through a bit more of the Gray data. right? And then we also have a place to build an action plan, which is an optional part of this if you wanted to do it. Um, but you can say, based on my analysis, what are the actions I'm taking to try and move us towards whatever my conclusion was. So I'll start off by going into the semester review. And when I do this, this is going to come up on the screen. And on the left side here, you see a couple of cards. These are analyses that we've already entered here in our sample data. And I'll open one of these up in a second. On the right-hand side of the screen, what you're seeing is what Nuventive calls our information panel. And what this does is it brings any information in here in the context of whatever process I'm working on here on the left. So in this case, I'm doing my semester review, and we've determined when you're doing that, that there's 4 gray dashboards that we're going to want you to look at. So right away, I'm narrowing down from the wide range of dashboards that Gray offers to their customers, right? I'm narrowing this down to 4 of them that I'm supposed to use for this analysis. So I'm going to open up one of these cards where we've already filled out the form. And what you'll see here is I have some sections on here, and this is, again, the expertise that I mentioned the Gray team has brought to the table, basically saying, what are the leading practices for analyzing this report in the context of evaluating my academic program? So if I open up this first section here around enrollment trends, there's some questions here that we've built. And the end user here, in this case, the program chair, could come in, fill this out. And what you'll see is, as I click in one of these fields, remember I said we want to provide people the information in context. So as I click here in the market enrollment area, watch the information panel. That's now going to narrow itself down to say, when I'm answering this question, I'm supposed to use this enrollment dashboard. Okay. So when I click on that, it's now going to pull up from the thumbnail. Hopefully I'm still logged in, and I am. It's going to pull up the enrollment dashboard from Gray. And what you'll see here as this comes up is that it's going to be automatically filtered because, again, I want to give this information to the person in the context of their role. So I'm in here as the chair of the computer science program. I've filtered this to computer science, to the bachelor's degree, and we've just, for the purposes of our demo, we've decided our geography is in the state of Florida. So we've passed those variables through. So as the program chair, I don't have to worry about how I manipulate this report to find my data. I'm getting exactly what I'm supposed to see. Once I come in here, I have access to any of the functionality of this report as if I was accessing it normally. So I can play with any of the slicers. I can do whatever it is I want to do to be able to answer these questions. If I wanted to, I can also make this bigger, right? So I can blow this up and look at it full screen if I want to be able to see the entire report, or I can go back to the half screen view if I want to look at this while I'm working in here. So the idea here is, right, as I move down this form and I'm working on the next section, right? So if I go from enrollment, and before I do that, what you'll see here as well is we have a place here to enter evidence. So what we've done is, as I've gone in and manipulated that dashboard, I'm able to say, hey, I applied some slicers to that. When I'm done, I can drop a snapshot in here that's going to be saved in perpetuity with my analysis. So if I want to come back next year and say, why did I make that decision? I don't have to try and manipulate the dashboard back to exactly what I did to find it. If my dean is going to look at my analysis, again, they don't have to go try and duplicate the view from the dashboard that I created by slicing it in various ways. They can just look at the snapshot that I added. And that's available in every section of this analysis. So as I move to the next section, I say I want to look at student demand, right? That's now going to switch to the market scorecard. So automatically, right, I have the right dashboard to answer this set of questions. And as this comes up, this one will also be filtered, right, to my program, my market, and I can come in here and just immediately start using this. I don't have to worry about finding it. So as we scroll through here, right, again, you see I can add the snapshot of the data I used. Once I've completed this, right, I can save it. I can close out, close this up so it's out of my way. And what I can do now is to say, okay, I did my form. I want to be able to share it with somebody. So we can run a report now that's going to come in, and I can say, which semester do I want to run? In this case, I'll just do all. And it's going to generate this report, which comes out as a Word document where I can see, this loads, right? Here's my computer science program. Here's all my answers to the question, right? Here's the evidence that I pasted in so that I have the copies of the reports that I used. And then if I have an action plan that I've developed, which I'll show in a second, um, right, that'll also be appended down here at the bottom, right? So if I want to share this with a colleague, I want to share this with my department chair, my dean, right? All this information's here. It's easy to use and to manipulate. So while I'm working on one of these forms as well, just open that back up for a sec. Um, if I'm working on this and I say, that analysis that I did led me to a conclusion that I need to really take an action to do something. I can come right in here down at the bottom and say add action. And it's going to pull up a form where I can create an action. Again, if I decide I want to do action planning in here, I can set this up. I can align it to which metric or metrics I'm trying to influence, right, from the dashboards. And that'll then save that right back into the system. I can keep working on filling out my form, right? But and the annual review is pretty much the same as the semester review with a couple of other sections. So we've done a little bit more detailed analysis in here, and we've asked, to draw a conclusion. So you can see here, there's a few more sections than we had in the semester review. I'm not going to bother going through all the questions. But at the end, we're basically saying, what was the program status that was recommended from the gray dashboard, right? So I can open up this program dashboard, and it's going to have a status in here of based on the data, right? And the calculations that are used in these dashboards. It's going to make a recommendation right up here in the corner. It's going to basically tell you, based on this data, we think you should sustain this program, right? I can come in here and say, based on my analysis, do I agree? Do I not agree? If I disagree, what do I recommend? What's my rationale? Right? And then have you updated your action plan to make changes on this, right? This is what's going to be shared up the chain to your deans and to other folks, right? So they'll be able to see across the organization what is it we've done, where you're going to have done your analysis to get to that, and then they can see, are we agreeing with what the data says? Are we making an additional recommendation? What are we recommending we need to do? The other piece of this from a program perspective is this ability to come in and see, if I decide I want to create an action plan, I can say here, each of these cards represents an action I'm taking. Let me get rid of that. So let's say I decided I'm going to develop interdisciplinary degree programs as one of my actions, right? I can come in here, I can create this action. Again, I can align this to the different metrics that we're using. And then I can also assign that to somebody. So if I say, Zach, I really want you to run this, right? We can assign this to Zach, and he'll get an email periodically on the schedule that we've assigned where he can just click a link, come in here, and provide an update on that action, right? He'd basically get the same form as if I opened this up to say, I'm going to provide my action update. We've also given a place to track lessons learned because we want to accelerate learning across the institution. So if everybody is working on a similar thing, or a lot of programs are all focused, let's say, on increasing enrollment, we can search to say, show me who else is focused on increasing enrollment and what were their lessons learned. So we can kind of learn across the organization as we go. These updates will track historically as well. The one I clicked on didn't have it. This one might. So you can see here, we can see a history of what we've done on these actions, right? So I can see chronologically, we did something in 2024, we came back in 2025, and we did some other things, and we can see that history. So from a program perspective, I have the ability to come in here, perform my semester and annual review, which guides me through the analysis of this data that's going to lead me to a conclusion. I can, if I want to, create an action plan and track my progress against that as well, and have the option to share effective practices with my peers. So now let me move up in the organization. You can see here we have a bunch of programs in here. Since I'm logged in as an administrator, I can see all of them. An end user will only see the one they're supposed to be in, so they wouldn't have a choice here. But I'm going to go to the College of Arts and Sciences now and say, okay, we've run we've had our programs do their analysis. Now I'm going to come in here as the dean, and I'm going to add my review of this. So if I click this card, you can see the dean is getting some different questions, right? They're being asked, do I agree with the program evaluation conclusions your organization has reached? Do you propose any changes? Well, how do they know this? They can come over here again in the information panel, and now they can run that same report, but for all of the units that roll up into their college, just for the sake of time, because this takes a little time to run if you do it for all of them. I'll just pick two. Let's do, I don't know, computer science and accounting. So I will grab those. I'll move them over. Oops, I moved them all over. Computer science, accounting. We're going to select those two, apply and run. This will take a second to run, but it's going to basically just append both of those reports together. So we already looked at the report. So now as the dean, I can come in here and I can say, oh, here's the accounting programs report, right? Whatever they said, right? Here's the computer science programs report. So I'm putting it all in one place for them so they can quickly look across their organization and not necessarily give detailed feedback to every unit, but being able to say as on aggregate, what do I think of what you've done? Right? Do I have any recommendations across my college for what we should be doing differently? As the college, I can also again come in and look at any of those dashboards and go in and filter them down for each program if I did want to see that. I can also, if I go to my homepage, we've built in some dashboards at the college level, so now I can start to look across all of my programs. And so, for example, I can come in here and I'm not sure if you can read the words on here, but this first tab is for the semester review. I can get a quick look at which units actually did it, right? The ones with the green check mark. And then we started in the data set, we pulled out some trend data. Right. So what's happening with my market enrollment versus my institutional enrollment. So I can start to see at a glance across all the programs in my unit, right? Or in my college rather, how are they trending on key metrics that we might care about, right? I have a similar report for our annual summary. We can look at overall findings, right? What did we recommend? What did we agree with that? What was our rationale? If we are using it, what are our action plans? So I can see all the actions my units are taking. And here's where we can use that metric alignment, for example, to focus down and say, hey, I'm really just interested in things that are affecting employment, right? And I can filter that down to start to look for that. Or I really only want to see things that are behind schedule so I can see what we need to work on, right? And quickly filter down. So we can start to look across our organization, see all the actions we're taking. I mentioned tracking effective practices, right? We can pull those out as well. And again, I can say, let me just find the ones related to student demand, right? And filter down to find exactly what I'm looking for across my college. So that kind of gives us an example of the kinds of information that we can pull out of here. And then just to finish up, right, we can also take this up to the institutional level. So we have an office of the provost here. And if we take a look at the office of the provost's dashboard, now we're seeing that they're seeing not programs, but colleges, right? So we have two colleges here, and they can see the feedback from the deans. So they can get a view down the organization at a glance to say, have we done this? What are the recommendations that my deans are making, and be able to look across the organization really quickly to say, from the detailed analysis we did based on the robust data sets from the gray dashboards, what recommendations do my program chairs have? How does that roll up at each college? How does that roll up to the institution? Let me stop there and leave some time for questions. Zach, did I leave anything out?
No, I think that was a great overview on how you can really operationalize a lot of this market data as an example. So thank you very much, John. And if there are any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out either now or later on. All of our information is there. So let me switch here, finish this up. So should see my summary page. So in summary, what did we see in March? Almost everything was up. The only thing we saw down was international page views, and really that was at the bachelor's and master's level. Doctorate still saw a 15% increase. So again, are there small changes you can make to to be more strategic and more tactical when you have this information. Keep in mind this relationship of programs to employment, and understanding how the employment in your market may differ from national, and are there different things you can add to your programming to even allow all of your majors to be more employable, even though and have more options when they graduate. So thank you very much for joining. I think I do see a question, but let me just check on this. Yes, and of course you will, there will be a link to this recording as well as that you'll be able to view after this. So next month, our monthly update will happen on Thursday, May 29th at 2 p.m. And as always, we have additional resources around program management. We have our course and the book Start, Stop, or Grow, written by our founder and CEO. So thank you very much. Hope you have a great rest of your day. And as always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Zach.